Everybody, it's Mark Hanna, Hothead Thundermouth, coming to you unscripted, unapologetic, uncensored, and psychologically immune from social media control. Today's video is about two things. The main issue I want to take care of here is this VBM freeze thing that I brought up a few weeks ago. I had taken some notes and done some research here, and as far as I'm concerned, this is solved, but it hasn't been solved by me. I'm going to show you who already solved this. And it's up to you whether you want to just stop playing with VBM freeze. I can tell you that people depend upon it now like a crutch because that's what they've learned is the way to take out enemy infantry positions. And I'll discuss this a little bit with you as well, with a current example of a game I'm playing. Where I'm on the receiving end of VBM freeze, but believe me, I've delivered it too, and it can really make for a less interesting game, in my opinion. So let's talk about that. Also, I've got a discussion about the Mike Simonitch series and which games I do play, which games I sold, and why. And I'll get into that a little bit. And then finally, I'm going to talk about what my next little project will be on the playing board, which is different than a vassal project, which is, those are two different media. There's also computer games, which I've dabbled in a little bit too. Talk about that as well. Okay, let's get into this. So, VBM freeze solved. How can I say this? How dare I say this? Well, I'll tell you who solved it. It was Dan Dolan and his team over here who did the Denant module. And here is the SSR, and this solves the problem. There's not a more elegant way to do this. Now the way to take out buildings is to do armored assault with infantry covering underneath your tank. Approach the building, take your chops, okay, and then go in. Use the tank for fire at point blank range and for cover, and get in that way. Currently with VBM freeze, what you have to do is make a decision. Either you do a residual firepower shot, in other words, you take a shot at the enemy armor so you can leave residual firepower for the infantry that is going to follow the tank. Because once the tank's in your hex, you are going to be in VBM freeze with a motion tank in your hex. If you have that situation and you don't have any light anti-tank weapons or anti-tank magnetic mines or anything like that, you really don't have a good chance of taking it out. You got a +2 in motion and CC. You might have an ambush roll, -1, but you got to pass a patsy. And then if your CCV is 5, it goes down to maybe a 4. That's a 1 out of 6 chance of doing something to the tank. Nevertheless, the infantry is probably going to get up next to you. Your alternative is to fire residual firepower, and if you have spraying fire, you can put, let's say, 4 factors of firepower here, 2 in the other hex, and then hope that's going to be enough to stop the infantry running at you, which you would have been able to hit much harder if the tank wasn't coming in first under VBM freeze. I looked up some research on this, and by no means is this a tactic that's ever been used or recommended for tanks in urban areas. In fact, the main recommendation for tanks in urban areas is to stay the hell out of them. I couldn't find any definitive tactics that had been used by tanks to take on buildings. There just wasn't a way to do it. Now you hear stories. There are some stories, and you have these in the movies a lot, where tanks are busting through factory walls in Stalingrad and stuff like that. And this actually isn't that far fetched. It can be useful strategy to do that. Um, Sometimes I'm not saying that you can't, but uh, generally speaking, this wasn't the doctrine that they recommended for these tanks. There's also the famous story of the Sanatorium Saint Edouard in Stavelot, I believe, where the Panther came up and put its giant gun right through the window and started firing at point blank range through the window. Um, and I was thinking, well, was this a possible way that they used to deal with this? And actually, um, I couldn't find any record of that. Most likely, whoever did that was a new young tanker for the Wehrmacht. Well, it probably wasn't the Wehrmacht because we know it was Piper who was involved over there. But rather than use the dreaded words on YouTube, we'll just call them the Schwermacht. They came up, maybe a new tanker's like, I'll show these Americans, and decided to do something stupid with his Panther. So, in effect, there is no decent tactic for this, and VBM freeze, I'm telling you right now, wasn't what was used. But for whatever reason, it's lurked in ASL lore for years and years. Scenarios are designed around it, unfortunately. So sometimes it's the tactic that you have to use to try to force positions. It's pretty annoying, really, that this is the case. Um, and in effect, what they did with Dinant, and all credit due to Dan Dolan and his team, I forget who actually wrote the rule. Somebody wrote to me in one of my postings before, I think, or somewhere I read who it was who did this. And kudos to you, gentlemen, whoever did this. This is an elegant way to take care of it. Look at this rule DN11. Vehicles and enemy units. A vehicle may not voluntarily end its movement phase or attempt ESB in the same hex as an unbroken enemy infantry unit. Uh, or it may do it if it can do these things, if it's under recall or it started its movement phase already in the hex and it did not leave the hex, or all enemy units were hidden at the moment of entry. So essentially, VBM freeze is out. Okay. Now, they explained that for the Dinant module, this made the tanks too powerful simply because the infantry didn't have any recourse to do anything about such tanks. More to the point, it just wasn't the doctrine that was being used at the time. The idea was keep the vehicles moving, let the infantry mop up. The vehicles might come up and do a point blank range shot and then move on. This is what Rommel was doing with his units at the time. Um, and since then, I haven't found anything. Now, if somebody has some research, can do an academic uh, look at this, that would be interesting. So, anyway, I mean, this is the new rule. So, for Denant, okay. So, new scenarios could use this rule. New scenarios could use the rule I came up with skulking, hunkering down instead of skulking. But it's going to be hard to get anybody to play this with the old scenarios, the 5,000, 10,000, or 17 million scenarios that are already out there. You won't get anybody to do it, probably because, well, first of all, the ASL rule book is the Bible, so they won't want to mess with that. So, I mean, here's an example of this being used against me right now, and that's fine. I mean, this is what you do. Okay. Now, in this particular scenario, this is a Twilight of the Reich scenario, actually quite an interesting one. The last train to what? Leningrad, that's it. And you're in a rail yard area with a lot of rail cars and stuff. And, I didn't know where he was going to put his big tanks, but he put them over here pretty wisely, I would say. Um, he's coming in with these two KVs, almost impossible for me to take out. It's even the 37L has a very small chance of doing ESB on this thing. Not ESB, deliberate immobilization if he keeps them in motion. Um, Now, of course, he's captured my 37L. Actually, what I did was I realized how useless it was, and then I saved the crew. I abandoned the gun. I hardly ever do that, but I thought, well, why waste a crew that could be used for victory conditions on the other half of the board or someplace else? So anyway, this lower tank that you see right here has been stymied by the roadblock. I don't know what he's going to do with it. This one, though, both of them have been doing VBM freeze. They've been coming in here, freezing my guys, freezing my guys. Then he's been using this flamethrower. There it is right there. Flamethrower and point blank firepower from 5.27s and 6.28 NKVD to twinkle me out of these positions. I've been lucky to be able to route. It's really hard to. Have you ever tried to defend row houses end on? They're almost impossible to stop the enemy from coming at you. I mean, because they can come at you along this axis right here. So that's what he's been doing. Let's pick a new color. So he just came zipping along here, and really, really hard. After you get put in VBM freeze here and here, your guys are just toast. Um, and unfortunately, his flamethrower seems to have a lot of juice. My flamethrowers don't ever seem to get more than one, maybe two shots, unless they're vehicular. I seem to have better luck. So anyway, he's using VBM freeze. I've been having to put little residual firepowers out here, 4 here, 2 here, 4 here, 2 here. But 4 firepower factors of residuals at +2 isn't going to stop 8-factor morale guys usually. So you put out the residual before the tank comes in because if you don't do it then, the tank's going to stop you from doing it afterwards. So you have two choices when a tank comes into your hex doing VBM freeze. One, put out the residual firepower to try to stop the infantry that's coming to save it. Two, hold your fire and go for the CC luck. That's it. Okay. Maybe if you have a leader in the hex, that can help because it puts your CCV up to 6. 6, and he's got a +2 for movement, and you got a -1 for ambush or something. So +1, you got a 5 or less to do something on the tank. That can be worthwhile. All right, but once you do the first fire, you don't really have any good shots for that until the close combat phase. And don't forget, you have to take the Patsy in order to do that. Okay, so long story short, let's erase all these marks. Thanks to Dan Dolan and company who came up with Denant. Oops. Use this rule if you're sick of VBM freeze being used. It's so boring to use it. Move in your tank, keep it in motion. Okay, turn your turret towards the guy, I suppose. And then come up with your infantry. Lather, rinse, repeat. Use your smoke dischargers on the way so the infantry has some cover to run up. It's an effective tactic. It's the way the game's played, but I don't like it. I don't like playing like that. I don't like skulking, and I don't like VBM freeze. It's horrible. All right. So that's pretty much it. There was something else I wanted to mention about ASL, but it slips my mind right now. All right. So let's switch over to camera view. I'm going to start a new tape here. And I'll go on screen just with a camera. All right, here we go. I'm going to stop the tape here. All right, hi everybody. Coming back on camera here to talk about this Mark Simonitch design. Actually, he's got a whole series of games here that I do like most of the time. Got into a discussion on BGG about this issue with these rules. And it came about, I was looking at, I'd accidentally left my filter on to France 1940 game, and somebody came in with the comment about what's going on with his halving and doubling attack and defense limits. Now, Mark Simonitch, for whatever reason, keeps fluttering about with his designs, sometimes including attack and defense limits. So, in other words, you can only attack with a certain number of factors, say 40, and defend with a certain number of factors, say 20, before all halving and doubling. He says, and he really says the main reason, perhaps the 90% of the reason, is to save people from doing math. Okay, so my friend and I, that we play a lot, we kind of laugh at this because we don't really think it saves much time at all. Because you're still trying to calculate, what kind of factors you can bring into a hex to get the optimal attack. And then if you can't bring in more than 40, what am I going to do with those other factors? Will I move these units up to the north? So there's still all sorts of decisions going on. So I saw that and I made a comment about this problem. And as usual, what happens is you get these guys on BGG who like to call themselves designers, maybe because they designed an attack factor or something, or maybe one counter, or they drew a picture, or they designed their own game. There's a lot of people on BGG who want to be known as designers, so that they can sound more professional, I suppose, more academic or whatever. So these designers came in and they're like, no, 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 you have the attack and defense factors. It's a amount of being able to bear so much information and to make an attack, to bring the units in to make the attack, to defend the perimeter per square meter, as if the designer actually took this into account. If you read what the designer says, Mark, he's just like, look, I don't like math. I don't like people, I don't like waiting around for mathematics. So I'm going to put these attack and defense factor limits in. There's no scientific rationale for this, but you get these, I would say, pompous individuals coming in to lecture us on why we don't understand this. And we're not designers. We're not as expert as you guys are. The fact of the matter is, any one of us, anybody watching this video, could take into consideration the fact that there's probably only a certain number of units that can attack at any given time. I mean, we play ASL, we know this. We know that you want to phase your attacks, you want to have some reserves. Uh, you don't line up everything and blast away. So to tell us that we don't understand something like this is a bit ludicrous. My point is that this attack and defense limiting structure, if it's at all necessary, can be built into the design of the counters themselves and the combat results table. You don't need to come up with some arbitrary and rather gimmicky attack and defense limits. So, and I've basically sold all of Mark's games that have this, and I won't buy any more of his games that have it. You get some really gamey playing by players who try to construct the exact defensive stack so you can get a 2.9 to 1, but you can't get a 3 to 1. You know, this defeats the purpose of the design as well. I mean, come on. So anyway, I was looking at this new game here, North Africa 41, and this does have the attack and defense limits. And I'll probably look at this game. I was going to do a video on it, but I'm not going to do that next because I just don't think it deserves my time. These are the three games that I think are really good by Simonitch that are in his series of 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47. Ukraine 43, one of the originals. No attack and defense limits on this. Great. Have no problem with it. Ardennes 44, he went back and forth on this one. Sometimes in one edition, he'd make an attack and defense limit. People would complain about it and said it breaks the game, which it did. All right. So then he made it optional. So it's an optional rule in Ardennes 44 to use attack and defense limits on your combats. So obviously, I won't use that rule. There's other problems with the game. It's a lovely game. I mean, all of his designs are beautiful. There's a lot of thought that goes into these games, and do not get me wrong here. I think I put that upside down. I am not critical of these designs themselves. I'm just critical of the way they play with this rule. Okay, and my hair looks funky, and I got the camera reversed, so look at that. I can't get my hair right. I look like alfalfa right now. That's funny. Okay, the other one that I really enjoy This has no attack and defense limits either. Holland 44. It's one of his more recent designs. But now all of his designs seem to be coming out with this attack and defense factor thing. I think he's made his final decision. Uh, Salerno 43 has attack and defense limits. Um, what was it? Stalingrad 42, terrible, terrible attack and defense limits, as I recall. And now this one does. Uh, North Africa 41. I don't know if it'll be as bad in North Africa 41 because that was kind of a small scale anyway. So I'm going to play it, but I decided not to showcase it as a video. Not when I'm more or less against that. And these are kind of seasoned designs, but they take a long time. This is a long game. Ardennes 44, Ukraine 43. You got to put some hours into that. So I'm not going to do that. I just wanted to mention that point. So what will I do? That's a good question. Thinking about it. I've got several options here. Um, can always do some more ASL. Uh, that's always in the back of my mind, but sometimes I like to veer away from ASL and come back. Rebel Fury, I've promised some more playings of that. That's really a good game and quite popular. Should go well with the videos. I've promised the Columbia Games guy, their social media guy, that I was going to update the Vassal module with some new units that have come out for sale in Wizard Kings. And also, I'm interested one of these days in looking at Victory. Blocks of War, which is another game with great potential, but slightly unrealized due to what I call balkanization of the rules, because some of the rules aren't clear, so people make up house rules. So you got this group over here making house rule A for retreats, and this group over here house rule B. This is a problem. This is why I don't like house rules, to fix something that's broken. We're trying to play ALAU 1807. This is a new design from a Swiss company, and I'd love to do that, but this one has too many problems with the rules too. I'm doing a joint project with another YouTuber and another player I've done work with before, Mark Trowbridge and Aaron. We're going to do we're doing a Quatre Bois Ligny battle. So it's a combined game. Very exciting. Probably Aaron, well, I know Aaron is going to take the lead on those videos, so I'll put a link to his videos and his channel too. I suggest that you watch that when they start coming out, but we're still working out some rules issues on that, so it will be a while. So I don't know what will be next on my table. Maybe I'll just surprise all you guys. So that's all I have to say for now. Thanks for listening. Hope you guys all have a great day. Like this if you liked it. If you didn't like it, thanks for listening all the way through. Subscribe, please. Trying to get the subscribers up who are interested in joining the channel. I don't do a lot of SEO optimization. I just haven't put the effort into it. I really do need to do that to grow the channel. So thinking about that though, because I might want to do something more important in terms of my career type of things or second career with a different channel. So I want to focus on that too. But that's a different story. I'll be doing some other videos for that soon. I promised them a long time ago and still haven't done it. So I'm procrastinating. All right. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. See you later.